Hi, what's up everyone? Let's get straight to the point. The XM5 is here and I'm going to tell you my first impression using this camera. First of all, before I tell you guys the things I like about this camera, I'll tell you guys something that is super weird with this camera. The film simulation dial. This is super confusing, and as I imagined, it's not that great because it sets the film simulation with the printout like on the dial, and then there is an option to use other buttons to switch to another film simulation. So basically it's super confusing if you set it to, let's say, classic chrome on the dial, and you set the film simulation to something else inside the menu, it will go to the other one but not classic chrome. So you'll be end up like getting confused by this dial setting in classic chrome. And another thing is, if you save anything in custom mode, the C1 to C4, whatever film simulation that you set that to, let's say you set a recipe into that custom mode, it will change that film simulation on the dial to that film simulation. So I'm on classic chrome right now on the dial, but if my recipe is using Reality Ace, let's say, it will change this classic chrome into Reality Ace when I switch it back and forth between film simulation within this custom mode. So super confusing. I don't know what they're gonna do with this because it's already printed on the dial. So that's the first thing that got me like super like confused. The second thing is what's inside the box. I know every company is trying to cut costs right now by telling you that yes, it is really good that they're being environmental friendly, but this camera, the XM5, the box only includes the camera itself, the body cap, and a strap, and the battery. And that's it. There's no charger. I can understand that if you don't include a charger brick, that's fine. A lot of the phones, let's say the iPhone does not include a battery charger, the brick, but they did not include even a USB-C cable. How are they going to expect people to have a USB-C cable? That's not something they should assume, at least to me. So that was not like a really nice move to me. They should at least include the cable so you can charge the camera and use it. So basically, if you buy the XM5, you will only get the camera and the battery. You'll need to buy a charging brick, assuming you don't have anything. You have to buy the USB-C cable and also, of course, the SD card. So you're basically spending more money on those three items. The charger and the USB-C cable can cost you, I don't know, like at least $20. I think that's not too cool. But that's it for the two weirdest thing about this camera. So let's talk about the first impression. This camera is really, really small. This is the palm of my hand, and it's barely bigger than the palm of my hand, and it's definitely smaller when it comes to this dimension. But this camera is thick, so do not expect this camera to be super thin and yet super small. This camera is kind of thick, but that's just the way it is. They have to put all the sensors and the processor inside. So this is a small camera this way, but a little bit thicker than I expected. And also, probably because of the small size of this camera, it's a lot heavier than I expected when you are just holding the camera without a lens. It has a little bit of a weight to it, which is nice. And that is a good thing if you are planning to use it with any lens. I'm going to talk about that like right now. As you can see, this is the 35mm f1.4 Fujifilm lens. This lens itself is not big, but you can tell that with the lens hood on especially, it's really big to this camera. I did not expect this to look like this. I was always using this lens with my Fujifilm X Pro 2. Now my X Pro 2 is extremely big compared to this camera because there's no EVF and stuff. But also this camera by itself is really, really big. And even when you're using this camera with a small lens, this is a small lens to me. The 35mm f1.4 lens, it's still front heavy. Let me show you. This is strap. You can see that the camera is really front heavy with this combination. So if you're planning to get the Fujifilm X-M5, do not expect to throw on a huge lens, especially the zoom lenses. you're not gonna enjoy the experience because this is already really front heavy. I don't think I'll put my 56-1.2 onto this camera. There's no way. Because of the small size, the grip is really X100. So there's not a lot to grip onto at the front, of course, and the material is okay. It's not super slippery. The back, there's a little bit of like a thing here for you to rest your thumb, but it's still really, really small. I have never used a small camera like this besides the GR2 and 3, where my two fingers are actually hanging. So not only my pinky, but my two fingers are hanging, so I have to kind of like pinch the camera to hold it, especially if you're having like a heavy lens. This is already really heavy to this camera. I can feel the pressure on my thumb. So if you're going to use this camera or get this camera, I highly recommend you to get the f2 primes and also let's say an X mount manual lens where they're usually really small. I'm going to test it with the per gear lens that I have, the manual focus lens. It's really tiny, so I think that will work really well with this camera. But anything else, anything bigger, you're not going to enjoy the experience. I don't expect people to use big lenses on this camera because this is the entry-level camera where you just probably got this as your first Fujifilm camera and you just want to carry it around to take photos on the street. So size-wise, I think they went a little too small with this. I don't think it's a problem if they make the grip a little bit bigger and put the new bigger battery inside. I think people are still gonna get it, but yeah, that's just the way it is. Now let's talk about some of the quality on this camera. The material on the body itself, it's the usual Fujifilm material where it's like kind of like a fake leather-ish kind of pattern. It's not super slippery, a little grippy, not as grippy as leather, of course, and I don't think they'll use leather on the camera. The top plate seems pretty nicely done. I don't think it's metal. It seems like they are made out of plastic, but pretty solid, and the dials are actually pretty solid. Especially the on and off button is super stiff to turn on and turn off. So you won't accidentally turn on the camera by flipping the switch. There's almost no way. And the exposure compensation dial, the back dial, it's a little mushy. The front dial, it's clicky, but there's one thing. You have the function or you have the feature of pressing this dial to switch or cycle between, let's say, aperture, ISO, film simulation, exposure compensation. But there's one problem. During the photo walk that I did with my friends, I always bump into this accidentally. I have it set to exposure compensation because this is a little easier than this dial for me to switch the exposure compensation and ISO. So what happened was I always find myself rotating this dial and then switching the ISO or changing the ISO, which I did not want to do. And that is because it's really easy to press in accidentally. You don't have to press it all the way down to get to the second option. So what I'm going to do or suggest you to do is just to set one function on this dial, let's say exposure compensation like I'm going to do. So just in case if you accidentally press onto this button, it's not going to cycle through different options or features. So that's one thing that I found. The buttons at the back are okay. The joystick, as usual, they're the super tiny Fujifilm newer joystick, which I don't enjoy. I don't know why they have to do such a small joystick. Buttons are okay. They are pretty clicky, to be honest with you. The menu button and the back button and the AEF, AFL, the other playback button, these guys, they are a little mushy. One thing I found like a little surprising is the screen quality, not the display quality, but this hinge right here, it feels pretty cheap. Like I feel like the first time when I had to flip it open to see the screen, this hinge was a little fragile feeling to me. So this part I'm not super excited about. And this hinge right here, it's made of plastic and it looks cheaper than the leather patterns plastic for some reason. I don't know what happened. So it's just a black painted plastic. So try to be nicer to your screen because I feel like it's gonna break if you do it like too harsh. The bottom plate, plasticky feeling, just like the top plate, but it's not a huge problem. But again, they put the tripod mount close to the battery door for smaller camera and it's off center. So I don't know what they're thinking. Maybe it's really difficult to put it in the middle when your camera is so small, because if they did, it's probably going to touch the lens. So they have to make the camera thicker and taller. So maybe because they were, again, going for like a too small of a size, they put the tripod mount closer to the battery door and it's off center. So if you have a plate attached, you can't open the battery door. That's it. The SD card, it's inside this door as well. So yeah, it's kind of annoying. And because it's so small, it doesn't have the autofocus switch, the autofocus single, continuous, and manual focus switch. I did not expect that to come back on Fujifilm cameras, at least not on these guys. So not a huge problem. But build quality wise, it's pretty solid, and I like these camera strap holes. They're, because it's so small, the camera is so small, if you are not using a strap, your fingers will be pressing against the metal ring. So it's not gonna be the super comfortable thing to hold on to if you don't use the strap. But other than that, the build quality is okay. Okay, just a couple more things about the XM5 as my first impression, because I've only had it for a couple of days. I will make a full review once I've used it long enough. Battery life, they're using the smaller battery. It's not that great. You can use it for one day if you turn the camera on and off during a photo walk. If you're using this camera for work, which I don't recommend, but you can still do it. You will need a couple of batteries because they did not put the big battery inside. I feel like if they make the grip a little bit bigger, they can fit the bigger battery, but they did not. So small battery, they're not that expensive, but it's just a little annoying because your battery life is not going to be as good. Another thing is there's not a lot of accessories for this camera yet, probably because it's really new. On Amazon, at least on the Canada site, there's nothing. Not even the camera itself. There's no screen protector. There's no like the leather grip. There's no cage or anything. But if you go on to, let's say, the Small Rig website, I think they have the cage and the leather grip and screen protector even. But I couldn't find anything here, so that's why I'm like using like a handmade kind of screen protector. I don't like my screen being scratched. But there's not a lot of accessories yet for this camera, but you can usually get the usual accessory like the hot shoe cover and also the shutter button, the soft shutter button thing, the cover. I don't want to put it on this new camera because that screwed on button actually messed up my X Pro 2 shutter button. So yeah, I don't think I want to risk putting a button on this camera, but you can definitely do it. All right, after using the Fujifilm X-M5 for the first photo walk, my impression is familiar sensor. This is a X-Trans 4 sensor from all the way to X-T3 if I'm correct. Familiar sensor, really good image quality. Color-wise, Fujifilm colors, no complaint at all. I was using the Kodak Gold 200, my favorite Fujifilm recipe for the photo walk for portraits, and they look really, really nice. Just a slight tweak on my computer. Everything looks super nice already. As I said before, I always prefer getting the look in camera as much as I can before I do anything in post. I much prefer taking the photos the way I want it to look as a final result. So no complaint at all when it comes to image quality, but this camera is just too small. So if you're planning to get this camera, I would say only if you are planning to use this with small lenses, let's say the primes and even the manual lens. Even the 35mm 1.4 is the biggest lens I would put on this camera. It's just way too small. I don't like the size at all. But yes, of course, it's nice to carry around with the camera strap, but this is definitely not pocketable like the GR series. So don't expect to put it in your pocket unless you get the 27mm lens, the pancake lens on it, then maybe you can fit it in a jacket pocket. But other than that, you can't do it with a regular pants pocket or whatever. Yeah, a nice camera, nice looking camera, but it's not as practical as I expected. But I'll still test it out and let you guys know more about how I feel about this camera in a couple of videos later. And yeah, we'll go from there. I am filming on an iPhone right now, so I apologize for the audio, and that is because I'm actually testing the new feature that's new to me, the Apple ProRes in log, Apple log, filming with the Blackmagic camera app, and I was blown away by the image quality of the iPhone. I only got the iPhone 15 Pro Max, so let me know how you feel about the image quality. I'm not going to tweak any colors or anything. I'm just going to leave it as it is and upload it to YouTube. So let me know what you think. Audio, I might adjust it because I'm using the onboard microphone on the phone right now. So I might tweak the audio a little bit, but then image-wise, I just want you guys to let me know how you guys feel about it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one to talk about the XM5 more.